Greetings, my angelic friends.
And also my demonic enemies.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to Garden. If you're new here, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit the damn notification bell so you get updated. Today, we're going to talk about The Last Angel Warrior by John Wells III. This is a YA urban fantasy, which is not typically my genre because I don't read YA. So I should say actually it's not my age category of choice. But I will say this was pretty good. I've reviewed YA on this channel before and some of it has been fairly good. But this one I think may have been the best so far, in that the writing was good, the story and pacing was good, and I was genuinely rooting for the protagonist by the end. I could really empathize with him to a large extent. I felt his pain. The writing was that good, even though it's YA. So let's get into it. Let's start talking about why. If you haven't seen one of my reviews before, the system I use here is COMP. COMPP, that's characters, originality, message and symbolism, plot, and prose. And we typically go in that order. Now, we focus in this story on a main character by the name of Caleb, and this guy is I think he's 14 or 15, if I remember correctly. I read the book a few weeks ago, so forgive me. But he's 14 or 15, and he's black orphan in some small town in middle America, and it's very much set up like how shall I say, in a way where this could be almost any kid kind of thing, which is pretty typical of YA urban fantasy, is my understanding. Besides Caleb, we have his best friend, the comic relief character, who is kind of this slightly crazy conspiracy theorist type, little bit of a goofball, little bit of a paranoid type. He's kind of fun to read. We have a love interest, which doesn't really end up panning out fully by the end of the book, but it was still somewhat interesting to read. You know, it's a high school love dynamic, so it's a little bit silly, a little bit like awkward teenagery, but again, the writing of the whole thing is fairly good. We have a faux antagonist. The protagonist's history teacher for like the first half of the book is set up as being an antagonist, and we actually find out towards the end of the story, I don't want to spoil, but we find out towards the end of the story that might not be the case, and we end up getting a antagonist later who was not set up to be that way. So there's a very interesting bait and switch / red herring situation going on with the character dynamics. And every character in the book was pretty well written and believable, and none of them felt like a caricature or a token or like they weren't fleshed out. All the characters were pretty good in my opinion. Especially considering we're reading YA with this, I'm going to give the characters 100%. Next category, originality. And this is one of the places where I think this book shines. The author, John Wells III, has constructed an entire, far-reaching mythos that goes all the way back to biblical times and before even. So his mythos is very far-reaching back, and there hasn't been a whole lot of building on it yet, but it's been outlined enough to where we get an idea that he's really building his own mythos right here in this story and in the story's universe. And some of the concepts are fairly interesting and original. And there were a few things that I didn't particularly care for, but they weren't stale. You know what I mean? I didn't care for them for reasons unrelated to the title of the category, which is originality. So, overall, I'm going to give originality a 90 because it was pretty damn original. There was some reliance on genre tropes, and there was some use of, shall we say, roads that have been tread before, but he tread them in a fairly individualistic way. So he wasn't just doing the same thing other people have done with these things before. He tried to put his own spin on it, and by and large succeeded. So we're going with a 90% on originality. Message and symbolism was pretty good. We have the message of camaraderie and friendship and sticking by your friends, being loyal to your friends throughout the story. That's a good message, obviously. We have the message of not assuming and waiting to get all the facts before you make a judgment. That's a good message. We have the message of good versus evil, and sometimes to piggyback on the back point, sometimes the evil ones aren't the ones you think. So you really need to pay attention and wait before you make flash judgments on things. These are good points. They're good messages. The symbolism in the book, there was some use of vaguely occult imagery and symbolism, and there was some use of MacGuffin type items that were usually symbols for ancient power or ancient knowledge. So the message and symbolism category was pretty good overall. The symbolism could have been a little bit more layered and deep, but again, we're in YA, so I'm kind of grading on a different curve, right? Because we are in the YA genre, so we don't want to expect, Tolkien levels of symbolism here. However, I will say that, like I said earlier, for YA, this is pretty good writing, just all over. So I'm comfortable actually giving this category 100%. Now, we get to plot. And the plot was perhaps one of the most solid elements in the book. I think that it was very well structured. The pacing was immaculate. And while the twists and turns were somewhat predictable, again, because we're in YA, I'm an adult, they weren't all 100% predictable. There were a few times where I said to myself, okay, I'm not sure where he's going with this. And I liked that. Besides that, again, it was well-paced, well-structured, and had a satisfying conclusion, and there were no plot holes as far as I could tell. And I put a huge premium on not having plot holes. Your plot can be so-so, but if there's no plot holes, I'm going to give you a lot of grace, because especially when you set up a huge mythos and there's a magic system in place and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to give you a pretty big point bonus, we'll say, just because you didn't fuck up, because you see so much fuck up in writing these days. So we're going to say 100% on plot. Prose is perhaps the area where I think I'm going to be the hardest, but not really hard, because again, we're in YA, so I have to kind of think of it in, is this good writing for a young adult audience? And that means that I have to kind of adjust how I'm looking at it to give it a fair and honest review. If this was written for an adult, I would say the prose was probably like a 60-65, because while they're clear and well communicated, they're high school, you know what I mean? Like, this is high school level communication, but it's written for, 14 through 20 or so. So when you consider that, it's like, okay, so actually this is pretty good. It's, again, clear. There's nowhere where it's like, what the fuck did I just read? There's none of that. It's all understandable. It flows well. It conveys the voice of the character because it's written in first person past tense. So the narration conveys character voice fairly well. And so actually, now that I think about it, when I think about how well the character's voice was conveyed by the narration, I think I'm going to take that point score all the way up from a 60 if it were an adult to, because we are in YA and considering how well the characterization, because then again, the narrator is a 14-year-old boy, we're going to give this an 85% in prose. Docking points only, and I do mean only, because I would have liked to have seen a little bit more use of complex language, a little bit more use of complex sentences, because frankly, I think that we need to demand more of the young people of newer generations, and so the writing that's being marketed to them should start sounding a little bit more intelligent, in my opinion. We should really demand more of them intellectually, especially when you look at how other countries, Japan, are handling their education. And hey, by the way, guys, again, please hit that sub button, ring the damn bell for notifications. It helps me out more than you could ever know. Drop me a comment, let me know if there's a book you'd like me to talk about, let me know if there's a subject matter in concerns to writing that you'd like me to talk about. I love taking requests from you guys and engaging with you guys. So, just let me know. Also, if you're just now finding my channel, I want to let you know I'm doing a read-along of my book, my debut epic fantasy, The Garden of Lies, every Wednesday here on the channel, for free. All for you, because I love you. Also, if you're so inclined, check out my second channels that I do with my friend Cait, IYFA, if you're feeling adventurous, and Adventurous Publications, where we do a weekly Saturday show and get into all kinds of shenanigans. Also, me and Cait recently launched a Patreon to make our publishing company and other projects come into full fruition. So if you want to support us in our endeavors to make awesome fan animations, original animations, more awesome merch, more awesome writing, and of course get our publication company off the ground, you can go subscribe to our Patreon, buy some of our merch, or buy one of my books. That's it for now. See you all next time. Welcome to Garden.